Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 4.0. I wanted to get this video out there so you guys can all see my thoughts on the tier list and the meta just before the new season starts tomorrow. And I think there's some very exciting changes with all the new items, all the champion changes. So I'll be going over all the changes that I've made in this tier list and probably go over some of the other champions. But as always, if you feel like a champion should move up or down the tier list, let me know down in the comments. I always reply to every single one of them. And let me know what champion you will be starting with next season when it starts on Monday. So very exciting stuff coming for Wild Rift. You can see Zoe sitting there in S+. I'll talk about her a little bit later on. Let's start off with the Baron tier list first up. So first up in the Baron, we got the S+ tier. Some of the champions that got a few buffs and a few changes in this patch that have been kind of unchanged. I think Wukong is still up there as one of the best and one of the easiest Baron laners to play. He's definitely one that I would recommend to pick up. He didn't get any changes, but he's still really strong with the Black Cleaver Divine Sunder combo. Has a lot of healing, has a lot of mobility as well. You can bait people out with your clone. A lot of great stuff with Wukong. With Renekton, he did get a few buffs in this patch. His first ability, I believe, is the cooldown went down and also the healing percentage went up, so it means that his early game is now a little bit more aggressive. I thought Renekton was S+ tier champion beforehand just because he's very easy to play. He's very aggressive during the laning phase, and you can snowball your early game into the mid and late game during those team fights. So Renekton, another champion that is really great. Akali's still really strong because of all of her scaling that she brings. She's not that strong during the laning phase. You have to play it kind of a little bit passive, but with the items, you know, Rift Maker, Death Cap, all these crazy AP items that are in the game, that scaling is just unmatched upon anyone else. Same with Jax as well, kind of the same thing but in an AD sort of situation. Akali's AP scaling, Jax's AD scaling, all about split pushing with Jax. You can go for Hullbreaker, Divine Sunderer, Blades, Ruin King, one of the best 1v1 champions for sure, especially during the mid and the late game when you're looking for split push, trying to take down the inhibitors. Early game he's not really that strong, but he's still a strong champion to pick up, but you just have to play passive, and then mid late game he's pretty strong. Fiora as well, early game is very strong. Her trades are very good with grasping on dying, and again another champion that can scale very well into the mid and the late game. Jace still the same position as well. Hullbreaker is still very strong. Man immune for scaling, armor penetration items. Ghostblade as well is also very good on him. Another champion is very strong. Aatrox is still up in the S+ tier as well. Even nerfs that happened a few patches ago, Aatrox is still a very strong champion. If you can hit the sweet spot, if you can land them abilities in the correct direction and understand Aatrox's combos, then he is definitely very strong. Garen, he received a buff a few patches ago. Very easy champion to play. It's my go-to Baron lane champion. Very easy to play, spin to win, tank a bunch of damage and also deal a bunch of damage at the same time, which I think is really good. Now another champion I've moved up into the S+ tier is actually Camille. Now I played a few games of Camille with the changes that happened to her. A few of the changes that happened to her is obviously her first ability now got changed. You now can't use your first ability twice. The game actually automatically procs the second part of your first ability, so all you have to do now is auto attack. Now this is a bit of a nerf for more pro players, but this is not really a pro player tier list. This is just a generalized tier list across all ranks. And what this has actually done, this has made Camille a lot easier to play. I even found it myself. I mean, I'm not the best Baron laner. As many of you may know, I'm a dual lane carry main. So I don't play Camille that much, but I did play a Camille game, and I will be releasing a Camille gameplay very soon with all of the changes. But her first ability is a lot easier to use now. A lot easier to use. The second ability got a huge buff as well. You now get healing on both the outer and the inner ring, and the outer ring now does percentage health damage. And also the third ability as well, if you miss that first part of the third ability, it now goes on a 3-second cooldown instead of you having to wait 20 to 30 seconds. So a buff for more, I would say, beginner friendly Camille players, but a bit of a nerf to pro players. But for me, this is enough to move Camille up into the S+ tier because she's still a strong champion. She can still trade very well during the laning phase. She's still a very good split push queen. She's also very good during team fights as well because she can lock down a carry and do a bunch of burst damage. And like I said, you don't have to worry about your first ability now. All you have to do is activate it once, keep auto attacking, and you can worry about other things like repositioning through team fights, ulting the right targets, or trying to land a hook shot when you can. So very important changes to Camille, and that's why I've moved her up into the S+ tier. For the S tier, you still have a few champions in the S tier. You know, Shen is still very, very strong. I will talk about some of the item changes a little bit later on, but I don't think any of the tank item changes really benefited the tanks too much, because I don't really like the changes too much. Shen, still think is very, very strong. I mean, Shen, you don't really build tank anyway. You got like Divine Sunderer, Sunfire, Hole Breaker. You go for a more damage build, but you can build a little bit of tankiness later on during the build. But still very good at trading, very good at split pushing. Obviously got a few buffs a few patches ago as well, for his jungle clear, and also for his what's the word called, for the AoE damage that you can deal now, so you can push the lane quicker and then use your ultimate to join a fight whenever you can. Gragas is still very strong, a lot of healing, a lot of trade potential with Grasping Undying. You can go for like a tanky Gragas build, and with that tanky Gragas build you can then look to, you know, join in team fights and be very, very strong. So I think that is a very, very strong part about Gragas. Darius, still very strong. I don't think he's as strong as the other bruisers in S+ tier, but he's still a strong team fight Baron laner that you can play. And I think he is still very, very strong. Irelia obviously got well, I mean, this is like the third time they've announced on patch notes that they've finally nerfed the dash ability, not being able to follow other dashes from enemy champions. But I think they finally fixed it now. Not too sure if that's actually confirmed or not. Let me know down in the comments. But obviously I don't play Irelia too much. But I still think she's a very strong champion, even though she doesn't follow dashes now. But she's just a very difficult champion to play. That's why I put her in the S tier and not the S+ tier set as well. Another strong bruiser that you can play, very, very strong. Malphite is a pretty good tank. I did try and play Malphite with the new Frozen Heart. I think Frozen Heart is okay for Malphite. He doesn't really have that carry potential of other bruisers in the Baron lane. For me, Malphite is just more of a tank that you can just join a team fight, try and use your ultimate, your unstoppable force, try and land a huge, massive team fight ultimate, and then maybe you can change your fight through that. But he doesn't do a lot of damage. He doesn't have the carry potential. Riven has the carry potential though, a lot of mobility, especially during team fights as well. You can try and easily get into the backline, try and look for flanks, does a lot of damage, has the shielding, has trade potential as well, which I think is really good. Gwen, I've actually moved down into the S tier. Now I might have made a little bit of a mistake here, I'm not really too sure. I just thought that obviously moving Camille up into the S+ tier, I felt like I had to move someone down, because having so many champions in the S+ tier, I had a thought to myself. I went through every single S+ tier champion. I was like, out of all of these, which one deserves to be moved down the most? And for me, it's Gwen. Obviously there was a nerf that happened quite a while ago, which nerfed her laning phase a lot. You know, base health went down, the third ability got nerfed, and I tried to play Gwen recently, and it's very, very hard to play Gwen now in the early game in laning phase. You basically have to play super, super passive. She's very squishy during the laning phase. She doesn't have a lot of damage output as well. Yes, she has a little bit of mobility, but that's all she has, and that's why I've moved her down. And Sion received a big, massive buff as well. It receives more stacks now on large monsters with his passive. His first ability, minimum charge, went up, and also the slow went up on his third ability. So I've moved him up into the S tier, and I think that he is a very, very good tank that you can play. Again, you can go for like an Iceborne Gauntlet Frozen Heart build like you do with Malphite, and you could be just a big, beefy tank. And the one thing about Sion, and one of the main reasons why I moved him up into the S+ tier, is I've seen a lot of Sions. Now, don't get me wrong, there's this thing with, you know, Sion where you can go like Intin Sion build, and you can just completely run it down. I've had Sions in my game completely run it down, but still have a big, massive impact on the map. Whether they're ulting a lane that has no minions and they're just auto-attacking towers over and over again, they'll be 0-10, but they'll take an inhibitor. And the big thing is, still at the moment, is that inhibitors don't respawn. I don't think this will be that effective when inhibitors respawn, when they add that in the next few patches. But I think now you could just play, I mean, I don't recommend it, but you can play Inting Sion, just go into side lane and just take an inhibitor for free. That's the way that I see it. Ken and Olaf, they're still both okay. Obviously, Ken's really good during team fights, can trade very well during the laning phase. Olaf is still pretty good as well, just not as good as the other bruisers above. Mundo, as I mentioned, tank items are not really too great at the moment, and I don't think the AP champions are really in the meta too much. If you're against a very heavy AP comp, then Dr. Mundo can be very, very good. Pantheon, kind of meh. I don't think he's too great. Has a lot of burst potential, but it's very hard to burst anyone really in the Baron lane because of how tanky they can be. And obviously they start Ruby Crystal most of the time. Graves is okay. I think Graves is pretty decent. Not a bad Baron laner at all. And the other champion that I've moved up and last champion I moved up is Singed. Now, I think Singed received some pretty crazy buffs this patch. The ultimate health regeneration, mana regeneration went up. Your first ability now costs less mana and also scales more with ability power. And I think Singed is a champion that can definitely look to, you know, try and carry. He's not like crazy broken like A, S or S plus tier, but I think that he deserves to move out of that B tier rank, because I think that, you know, Teemo, Trendemir and Nasus are pretty useless, and to be honest I think Singed was kind of useless, but I think with these buffs he definitely deserves to move up into the S plus tier. As I mentioned, obviously Teemo, Trendemir, Nasus, I think any of these champions really can bring anything to the game, and the same with Kayle as well. Kayle doesn't really bring anything to a game or to a team fight or even to laning phase. Teemo can maybe do a little bit of something with the shrooms, but he's kind of useless during team fights. Trendemir can maybe split push, look to go for a crit build and maybe do a lot of damage. Nasus, you just take forever to farm. You're so useless during the early game. Same with Kayle as well. I mean, Kayle versus Nasus, probably Kayle wins, I would say, in that situation. But I think Nasus is just a little bit more useful during team fights. I mean, if Kayle reaches level 15, yip-de-doo, it's just getting to that point, which is the main problem with Kayle. All right, moving into the jungle. I'm going to try and go through, obviously, every single champion, but I don't want to completely lose my voice, because that'll be a bad thing. Right, let's go into the jungle. In the jungle, I'll try and go through all the champions. Obviously, Wukong I already mentioned briefly in the Baron lane already, but he's still very strong in the jungle just because it's how, you know, how strong he is during team fights and how quickly he can clear through the jungle. Aatrox, same as Baron lane as well. Still has a lot of damage potential, has a lot of healing, has a lot of team fight potential. Yone still insanely strong as well. His clear speed is insane. He basically gets three ganks with his third ability as well, and he can just dash away to safety. The Sin still really good early game jungler that can look to dash around, get an early game advantage. Obviously, with the jungle changes, it means that early game junglers likely Sin can get a huge advantage in the early game. Kha'Zix, even after the nerf that happened this patch with isolated targets, all they basically did was reduce the cooldown when you use your first ability on isolated targets. It basically didn't do anything. Kha'Zix is basically unchanged. You get like, you have to wait a little bit longer to use your first ability on isolated targets. Yip-de-doo, this champion still does a lot of damage and still clears the jungle stupidly fast. Same with Olaf as well. Jungler that is still completely fine. You're not as strong during the early game like a, you know, a Lee Sin or an Aatrox or anyone like that, but if you farm up, scale, get a few items, then he could just run around and be an absolute beast in the mid and late game. Lilia, now there was a few nerfs that happened to Lilia as well. Her health per level went down, and also her first ability, the damage went down, the base damage, and also the monster modification, which is how much extra damage you do to monsters, also went down. Obviously this affects her her jungle clear quite a bit. Health per level I don't think is that big of a thing because you go for items like Riftmaker, Rod of Ages, Leandri's Torment, so I think you're building a lot of health anyway, so I think that that's fine. I don't think that nerf is too effective. The first ability might affect her jungle clear a little bit, but I think that she just offers way too much as a jungler for her to be moved anywhere but the S plus tier at the moment, because I think that she brings so much to a team fight. You know, with her ultimate, she still jungle clears relatively fast and she's still in a completely fine spot. S plus tier Aurelia, right? I already talked about her in Baron lane, but you know, she's still okay. She's still completely fine. Again, reason why she's in S tier, not S plus tier, is because she's quite a difficult champion to master. Vi, very easy jungler to play. I would probably recommend Vi to be like the go-to jungler for you to play in the new rank season. Because Vi is such an easy jungler to play. She's just a little bit difficult at times because she's very one-dimensional. She goes in with her ulti. If she goes too far, then she's kind of stuck. But if you catch the right target with your ultimate, and if you use your ultimate at the right time, then you could definitely carry a lot of team fights. Xinjiao's really good as well still. Very good bruiser that can look to isolate one target. Basically denies all range damage. If you're against a lot of ranged champions, then Xinjiao is a great champion to pick up. Morgana's still really good as well, even though you can't really double camp anymore. Morgana still clears the jungle relatively quickly and is still very strong. Riven, same with Baron lane, a lot of mobility, which means you can get into some different positions with Riven jumping over walls and everything like that, and kind of catch the enemies off guard, which is why I like Riven quite a lot in the jungle. Echo's still really good in jungle as well. You have to jungle clear a little bit with Echo, but I think most of the time that he is completely fine. Evelyn as well, really easy solo queue jungler to play because of her invisibility. And if, you know, the enemies that you're playing against, if they're low enough elo, then they don't really understand how to play against invisibility. Obviously, the new Dawn Shroud item is very, very interesting. But, you know, I think that Evelyn will still be completely fine because I don't think Dawn Shroud is, in my opinion, that great. Fiora still really good in the jungle as well. Again, a lot of mobility, clearing the jungle very, very quickly, and still very good. Shyvana obviously received a few buffs in this patch. I believe it was health per level, and her first ability got a few buffs, so I think that she's in a pretty decent spot. Jarvan as well, early ganking jungler, still really, really good. A lot of lockdown as well. Gragas, the burst heavy jungler, with a lot of damage if you go like the Luden's Echo Deathcap build, and with Cosmic Drive getting buffed, I think Gragas could be sitting in a good spot. Ross Kane still very strong as well. A lot of healing, a lot of crowd control, insane during team fights, and pretty much unkillable at times. Diana's the other one. Diana, I could honestly move up into S+ tier, and I probably should move up into S+ tier, and she can also run Electrocute now. I've been seeing a lot of burst damage heavy Diana jungles with Luden's Echo, Deathcap, and she does a lot of damage. I mean, she's kind of like a Gragas version 2, basically, where you're going for like a full burst damage Diana build, and she does a lot of insane damage. So I think Diana is definitely a jungler to keep your eyes out on. Nunu's still really good as well. More of a tank jungler, but still in a very, very good spot. And Fizz as well, still very good in the jungle. Moving on down, I don't think... Oh, yeah, there is a few champions of B tier. Moving on down, some of these champions are still, you know, completely fine in the jungle. Some of them are still situational. Obviously, Shen did receive a nerf in the jungle in this patch. The jungle damage now on your first ability did get nerfed, but I don't think the nerf was enough. I still think you can clear the jungle relatively quickly with Shen, especially with his first ability. I think that he's still completely fine. The thing is with Shen jungle is that it's so easy just to clear through the jungle and be on any place in the map at any point. That's basically what it is, which is pretty insane for a jungler. You know, you just clear through the jungle, clear through lanes, and instantly use your ultimate to counter get the jungler. So it's very hard to play against Shen as a jungler, because every single time you're looking for opportunities, you always have to keep in your head, it's like, oh, okay, Shen could arrive. And then as soon as Shen arrives, your gank's just completely turned around, and your gank just basically becomes useless. So that's why Shen is so insanely strong, and they could just go back to the jungle and carry on farming. So, you know, he denies jungle, he denies ganks, he continues to farm, so he's going to be ahead in gold, and he's also just going to be able to deny ganks all the time as well before level 5. I mean, after level 5. So pretty insane. Camille's still good in the jungle as well. Obviously, with the changes that happened to her, I think that Camille is completely fine in the jungle. Gwen, I think, is completely fine in the jungle as well. Again, a jungle clear speed is not as much as what it was before. But you know, she's still okay. You just need to get a few items, like 3 or 4 items with her, then she'll be fine. Graze is still good even after the phase rush nerf. I think Graze is still completely fine in the jungle. I think it's pretty good and has a lot of carry potential. Nautilus is still fine as well, still really good jungler. Warwick as well. Shadow Kane is kind of meh. Honestly, could probably move down a tier, to be fair, but I think Shadow Assassin Kane is still pretty damn good. Darius as well with phase rush, also very, very good jungler that obviously received a crazy jungle buff a few patches ago. And then A, B tier, most of these junglers are kind of meh now. Jack's jungle you never really see anymore because of that big massive nerf that happened to him, but he still can work if you just play passive during laning during the early game and just farm up and get like Trinity Force plus Blade of Ruin King, then you're in a pretty fine spot. Rammus is okay, can definitely carry in the jungle, and I've seen carry in the jungle many times, but not really a carry jungler compared to, like, you know, the S+ tier champions, for example. I think Rammus is still pretty good. Pantheon is still pretty good as well. At the game, ganking jungler, you can use your ultimate as well from pretty much anywhere on the map, and you can use it to gank many different lanes. Rengar's still pretty good as well. Dr. Mundo's kind of meh, even though they buffed him in the jungle. I don't think he is that strong. And then you have Tryndamere, Master Yi, and Mumu, which most of them, I mean, probably work in lower elo, but they definitely don't work in higher elo. So that's why I put them down in the B tier. Nothing in C and D tier though. But yeah, Master Yi, Mumu, Tryndamere, don't really offer too much. They're kind of meh, I should say. Right, mid lane. There's only one place I can really start in the mid lane. One place I can really finish in the mid lane, which is Zoe, the new champion that come out. This champion is pretty disgusting. I was expecting it to happen, and here we are. Zoe is completely broken, in my opinion. Her early game is not that great. The reason why her early game is not that great is because they did a few changes to Spell Thief, her second ability. The way it works in PC League, when you level up Spell Thief, it works on the minions that are already on the map. The way Spell Thief works in Wild Rift is that it waits for the next minion wave to spawn, and that wave will have the Spell Thief you know, proc, and what you'll be able to get a summon, a spell, or a or an item from, or boots upgrade from. Now this obviously nerfs Zoe quite a lot in the early game. I think early wave clear is like okay, it's mediocre, it's not the best, because I tried to like push waves and tried to get an early lane advantage, and I was like, oh, I could quickly get level 2 off the first wave, level up my second ability, and get an early boot enchant upgrade on the second wave. But I realized quickly that that doesn't actually work. You have to wait until the next minion wave spawns from the base to then get the Spell Thief, you know, the Spell Thief item, which is a big nerf to Zoe in the early game. But to be honest, when this champion scales, holy moly, this champion's damage in the late game is absolutely disgusting. All you have to do is land one bubble and you're just dead. You're honestly just dead from downtown. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from, like, you're just dead. So I mean, this champion does so much burst damage. Obviously it has a lot of mobility as well with Spell Thief, can pretty much pick up every single item, boots upgrade, and summer spell in the game. You know, the crazy thing about Zoe is as well, which I really think they should remove, is that if anyone uses the boots of speed, or even just plated still caps, even if they don't have a boots upgrade, if they just use the boots, that boots also drops on the floor. Zoe can pick that up and get the movement speed and use that Spell Thief passive, or Spell Thief active, and use that boots of speed, movement speed, which I think shouldn't be in the game. I think it should just be summoner spells and boots upgrade. I don't think you should be able to use it on boots of speed and, you know, armored steel caps or gluttonous grease or anything like that, because she's getting movement speed from the second ability already when she uses it, and then she's getting more movement speed because she can just use the boots, you know, boots movement speed at the same time, which I think is pretty broken, to be fair, and I think they should remove that. But yeah, anyway, Zoe sitting nicely S plus tier. Other than that, nothing else has really changed. Ari's still insanely good in the S plus tier. Diana's still very, very good. Yone, Casting, Karma, Kali, Vex, you know, all these champions I would highly recommend for the new ranked season, especially champion like Ari as well, because Ari is a very beginner friendly champion, and a champion that you can easily carry with because of all her mobility, her charm, her first ability doing a lot of burst damage as well. Obviously I've spoken about Diana already in the jungle, but Diana mid lane is also very, very good. I'm surprised Yone didn't get a buff, because I think he is still insanely strong. Castin obviously received a buff a few patches ago and still really good. Karma's a very supportive mid laner, but still does a lot of damage. So if you're a support looking to play a mid lane champion, then Karma's definitely the one for you. Akali a bit more difficult to play, but is a very, very scary assassin that you have to keep your eyes out on, and probably one of the champions to ban in the new ranked season. And Vex as well is still pretty damn good. S tier, I've already spoken about her in top lane and mid lane, but very, very strong jungler, has a lot of mobility. Very strong mid laner that has a lot of mobility, but it's very difficult to master. Same with Katarina as well. I think Katarina is a very difficult champion to master. Easy champion to play and to understand, but a very difficult champion to master. You know, when to use your ultimate, when to jump in, when to jump out, using your passive and using your daggers to full effect. That's kind of the difference between a Katarina main and a Katarina that can 1v9, and a Katarina that can't really do too much. So that's why she's down the S tier. Zed is still insanely good as well. This champion is still really, really strong. Very, very scary assassin that can just run around. You can basically use your ultimate. It does obviously get countered by stasis, but not a lot of champions are building stasis nowadays. So it's, you know, that's why he's still pretty good. Kha'Zix is still insanely good as well. Wave clear mid laner. Galio's still really good. If you want an anti-mage mid laner that still does a lot of burst damage. Twisted Fate with his ulti being able to rotate around the map is still really good. Yasuo's still good. Orianna's still good with her wave clear. Lucian's still a burst heavy mid laner that you can take advantage of these weak early game mid laners, you know, like a Castin, like an Akali. If you want an aggressive mid laner to play, then Lucian's definitely the one, because you can just play aggressive, use Kraken Slayer to take early game advantages and use that to snowball into the mid and late game. Gragas still insanely good with his burst damage. Corki's still pretty good. Jace and Fizz as well, they're all still pretty good. A+ tier, Akshan is still there because I think Akshan is still a pretty decent mid laner. Not as good as like a Lucian or Corki, as like a marksman mid laner, but I think he's still pretty good. Veigar can be pretty good. I think the buffs that he received a few patches ago were very, very nice. Other than that, I don't think that Veigar can do too much, especially if you're against a lot of assassins and bruisers. It's very hard for Veigar to stay alive. You have to make sure you use your cage at the right place at the right time, because if you don't, if you waste that ability, it's still on quite a long cooldown, and that could be the one opportunity for assassin to jump on top of you and deal a bunch of burst damage. You have to be careful with that. Echo still really, really good in the mid lane. Kennen as well. A tier, still some champions that you can play if you want to, but I don't think they're, you know, too good at the moment. Aurelion Sol, I think, is okay with some of the new items, but I just don't think he's as powerful as what he was before, you know, with the obviously Liandry's nerf that happened a while ago, Rylas Crystal Scepter nerf that happened quite a while ago, so I don't think he's in the same strong spot that he was before, but I think he still has a lot of carry potential. Singed, in my opinion, still stays in the A tier and mid lane, just because of the way the mid lane meta has changed. Obviously, I put him in the A tier quite a while ago, but you know, you don't really see mid lane Singed anymore, just because the way the meta is at the moment. You know, you don't need that Protobell tank mid lane, you know, Singed, and obviously he doesn't have that as much sustain as before. Lux is still pretty good. I mean, all these champions, you know, Lux, Brand, Annie and Morgana can work in the mid lane. The problem is that they're kind of immobile mages, and if you think of like Diana, Ahri, Yone, Kassadin, even Karma, Akali, Zoe, Vex, all of these champions have mobility and have easy ways to jump on these immobile mages, you know, like Lux, Brand, Annie, or Morgana. Some of them have shields to keep them alive. Some of them have, you know, some sort of crowd control. But it's so difficult as an immobile mid lane mage to kind of take control of the wave, and you're always going to be underneath your tower most of the time, because you're going to be so scared to walk up, because you might get, you know, ulted by a Zed, dove on by Yone, then you're pretty much dead. And that means that that other mid laner has free reign to roam around the map wherever they want to. So that's why they're down in A tier, and the Seraphine and Kayle sit nicely in B tier. I've already spoken about Kayle before, but again, as I mentioned before, she's pretty damn useless, and Seraphine's in the B tier because she's kind of a weaker version of the other mages in the A tier. Right, this is where things get spicy, into the AD carry. Now, there's been a few changes with dual lane. Obviously, this is my main role, so this is kind of where I have the most experience in, and the most, I guess you could say, data and analysis with certain champions. I've changed it a little bit. I think there's 3 broken AD carries in this current meta. Lucian comes as no surprise. Obviously, no changes that happened to him. Kraken Slayer is still really, really strong on him. The builds are still insanely strong as well. Even after Navori Quick Blades nerf, you can still go for that. You can still go for like Solari Charge Blade, Storm Razor, Infinity Edge, and that still does a lot of damage. Tristana, obviously, as everyone knows as well, the changes that happened to her with the way her controls worked was definitely a lot better, as you know, is a lot better for her now. And also, she just scales into an absolute beast. And Kai'Sa's a champion I wanted to talk about. Obviously, I did a Kai'Sa video quite recently. I think this champion is absolutely insane now because of the buffs that happened to her. Base damage increased, first ability went up, and now the second ability has quicker cast based on the attack speed. And I think this champion is absolutely insane. One big weakness for Kai'Sa was her early game before she took her double BF sword, but now it seems a lot easier now to survive during laning phase because of that base AD buff. It means you can trade a little bit more, and even if you do just play passive, that extra AD that you get as base AD, when you get to level 5, when you get double BF sword, that, you know, the extra AD that you get now from both the base damage and also the AD scaling, now the extra AD scaling you get now from your first ability, means that you can trade a lot easier, means that you're going to be a lot more impactful during that first dragon fight. So that's why, in my opinion, I have moved Kai'Sa up into the S+ tier. But that doesn't mean I've had to move a few champions down. I think that I think honestly, every champion in the S tier, bar probably Jinx and Corki, and probably Varus can definitely move up. bar from Jinx and Corki, I think can easily move up into the S plus tier. The reason why I don't think Jinx can move up into the S plus tier is she's very dependent on her support, especially as an enchanter support. You need an enchanter support with Jinx, or that she's not really too great. Corki, I just don't really think has that carry potential in solo queue. Even after the changes that happened to Corki in the most recent patch, obviously his first ability now basically scales with attack speed, so it has shorter cast time. I think that, you know, Corki's still, you know, pretty okay. I think Samira could definitely move up into S plus tier. Obviously received a buff in the most recent patch as well, which means her first ability now does a little bit of extra damage. But to be fair, you can't really feel that extra damage, to be honest with you. I thought that, okay, her first ability having an extra little bit of damage means that she can maybe trade more during the laning phase, and maybe she can last hit minions a little bit easier, but she's still pretty weak during the laning phase. You have to wait still until you get a few items. I'll probably do a video on her very, very soon, and also including Corki. Vayne could definitely move up into S plus tier. I think I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable on Vayne now because of obviously I got the coaching from Joey on one of his main champions, and I think that I feel a little bit more comfortable on her. And I do have a video coming out on her very, very soon with the Firecracker skin. Draven, if you can understand him, and if you can play him very, very well, then he is an insane dual lane carry. Just get an early game advantage, just destroy the low elo noobs, get a few kills, and then you're just going to snowball out of control, and you'll basically be unkillable. Xayah, obviously, as you know, my bae down in the dual lane. Again, if you understand how to play her, she could definitely be very, very strong. Ezreal, obviously a very passive AD carry, and a very different AD carry because he relies a lot on his abilities and landing his abilities more than his auto attacks, but he still does a huge amount of damage. You just need to play passive during laning phase, and he does an insane amount of damage once you get 2 to 3 items. And I think Ezreal could definitely move up into S plus tier. Varus obviously received buff after buff after buff after buff, and I think is insanely strong, but in my opinion doesn't have that carry potential in the dual lane. He's not like a hyper carry, he's more of a supportive AD carry because he relies more on his poke damage, you rely more on his crowd control with his ultimate. But I think he's still very, very good. And Caitlyn, I don't know, recently Caitlyn's felt kind of underwhelming to me. I don't know if it's because I go for the lethal tempo full AD build. I see people go like Conqueror, Stormrazor into Static Shiv, and you get the extra damage from Conqueror instead of the extra attack speed from lethal tempo. But I don't know. I just think that Caitlyn's a little bit underwhelming recently. I'm not really feeling the damage. I'm not really feeling that carry potential from the Caitlyn. So that's why I moved her down. But again, she's another champion that could easily move up into S plus tier because of her insane range and her insane early game potential. And other than that, nothing else has changed in the in the AD carry. Everything else has stayed exactly the same. Ashe and Jhin, and I don't know if Jhin got bug fixed. I guess not. With the Lord Dominic's regards, I'll probably have to message Endstep and see if he's bug fixed that. Ashe is still in the A plus tier. You can still play some AP mages down in the dual lane if you want to for the new season. Ziggs, Orianna, and Lux are all down in the A plus tier, but I think they're all insanely strong. Miss Fortune, I know a lot of you are waiting for me to do a Miss Fortune build on AP Miss Fortune. Honestly, I've tried it. I think AP Miss Fortune is actually better as support rather than dual lane. I've been trying to play support MF. It's just not working out for me. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to get good gameplay for you guys. I'll keep trying with support Miss Fortune, but it's just not working out for me at the moment. But maybe one day we'll get a support MF game and I can kind of tell you all my opinions about her. I may give you my short opinions very, very briefly. I don't think it's that great. I don't think the problem is that even though the AP ratios went up by quite a lot, she still does no damage. There's not really any items that can make her do a lot of damage. You got items like Imperial Mandate, which is more of a supportive item that could be quite good. The Andrew's Torment, and also Rylai's Crystal Scepter. But again, these are more supportive items. They're not really damage carry AP items. And again, obviously Miss Fortune support means you're not going to get that much gold. And I don't think you want to play AP Miss Fortune when you're playing in the dual lane, in my opinion. Any AT, you just got some of the weaker AP carries, but definitely playable AP carries in the A tier. Seraphine, Morgana. Whoops, as I accidentally click on Morgana. Seraphine, Morgana, Akshan. They're all still pretty good. I don't know why these ads have popped up, but easy way to platinum. Lol. Okay. I don't need platinum. I'm already master. Thank you very much. Yeah, some of the weaker AP mages, you know, Seraphine, Morgana, and Karma, they can still work, but they're just weaker. And even weaker than that is Brandon Vega. Obviously, Akshan, as I always say, is not that strong in the dual lane. I think he's a lot stronger in the mid lane. And I don't know why, but I've been seeing a lot of Senna recently. A lot of Senna in the dual lane. Please do not play this champion as a farming duo lane carry. It does not work. You don't get any souls. Yes, you get a little bit more farm, but the main focus of Senna is collecting souls, and the way you collect souls with Senna is you do not farm with her. You don't last hit with her. So please, 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 I beg you, do not play duo carry Senna. Do not play farming Senna. Just play support Senna. That's completely fine. Play support Senna is okay. I don't mind seeing support Senna in my games because I think Senna support can be pretty good. Duo carry Senna, on the other hand, completely garbage. Doesn't work. Right, into support. Literally zilch, zero, nothing changed in the support tier lists. One item I do want to talk about is actually Dawn Shroud. I've tried it a few times. It feels a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. I think the base stats for Dawn Shroud are pretty good. It's just the passive feels very underwhelming. You need a lot of bonus health with Dawn Shroud for it to be pretty much effective and do a lot of damage. Because it does like 80 damage, which is like okay in the early game. But the problem is you can't really get support items that quickly. You know, you can't really get items as a support that quickly because you don't get a lot of income as a support. You know, I've tried on Nautilus. I think Nautilus is probably the best champion to go for Dawn Shroud. But I don't really feel the damage. I tried Dawn Shroud into Warmogs, which obviously gives you a ton of bonus health. I don't really feel the extra damage at all. You know, I'd rather go for Dead Man's Plate, get the extra movement speed. I'd rather go for Ecstatic Sea Jar, get like Honeycomb Fruit or Blasting Cone and try and make plays through that. I don't think Dawn Shroud is very, very good in my opinion. But the best two supports to play in Season 8 is Karma and Nami. No surprise, Karma, an insane carry support. Every single time I play support, I always play Karma because not only does she bring a lot in terms of her support with shielding and crowd control, but also she does a shit ton of damage. You know, Luna's Echo, Death Cap, you can just go for carry Karma if you want to, and she deals a lot of damage. Nami, very, very similar to Karma. She doesn't do as much damage as Karma, but she brings a lot of crowd control and a lot of healing as well. You know, her bubble with her first ability, you can then follow that up with an ultimate, and both of these supports are great playmaking supports. If you want tank junglers to play, then you can still play champions like Thresh, Alistar, Nautilus. These are very, very good tank junglers. Pyke is very good as well. If you want a more carry jungler that can roam around the map and try and make plays around the map, then Pyke is very, very good. Akshan's still really, really good. Lulu's good if you're playing duo queue or trio queue. And if you have an AD carry you can trust, so you can easily play Lulu or Janna. Ash and Lux, again, more carry orientated supports. I think both of them are still completely fine. A+ tier, I think Leona can work quite well. I think Leona's pretty good. I just don't think she is stronger than any of the other tank supports above. I think Galio is just a little bit better. And not Galio, sorry, Alistar. Galio's pretty good. Still in the A+ tier. Brom's still okay, even though he got a weird nerf patch a while ago. As I mentioned, Senna's still pretty good, and Yumi's still pretty good as well. Again, Yumi is more of a supportive enchanter support that you kind of have to rely more on your team. That's why I like Karma and Nami better than Janna, Lulu, or Yumi. You know, any of these other enchanter supports, and especially better than, you know, Soraka, Sona, and Seraphine, because you have more carry potential with these enchanter supports. That's why they're up in the S+ tier, and the other enchanters are down in A+ and A tier. Sona and Soraka, though, could definitely carry and definitely do very, very well. I think they both scale insanely well, so they could definitely both move up. Set as well is pretty insane. I think Set is really, really good. He's definitely more of a carry support, a little bit more niche. Speaking of niche, you know, Shen and Nasus are also very, very niche. I don't think they're very good, but I think they're pretty niche. Morgana as support doesn't really work, but just because she doesn't really have any items to build as a support, it's very weird, actually. Morgana support, it doesn't work as well as like PCD, for example. And Blitzcrank's down in C tier. Obviously, Blitzcrank you can carry very, very easily if you want to, but if you miss your hook, you're kind of done. That is everything for the tier list for patch 4.0 and going into season 8. If you want a place where you want to pick up guides, or if you want to know more information about the new season, tier list, what my thoughts are on certain champions, and give this website a look. This website is Wild Rift Fire. This is the website that I run with the guys with Mobile Fire. This gives you a guide for every single champion in the game. So if you want to be like, oh, Kai'Sa got a buff, Stuart thinks Kai'Sa is S+ tier, let's go and take a look at Kai'Sa. And the great thing that they've added now to Wild Rift Fire is now we have base stats. So we have base stats for every single ability. We have base stats for every single level as well. So you can see that at level 15, Kai'Sa has 774 base health. And you know, you can see that for every single rank, and every single ability now has all the scalings, all the numbers and everything all updated for patch 4.0. So again, if you want to check out you know, someone like Yone, for example, as well, again, another champion that holds all the base stats and all the damage numbers there. Then you have builds, you have guides, written guides, combos, ability breakdowns, build breakdowns, and so much more. So again, if you want to check out the website, I will leave the link down in the description. I wish you all the best of luck in season 8. Hopefully you all get the rank that you deserve. I will definitely be grinding a lot on stream. If you want to check out my stream, link is down in the description. But as always, thank you guys and girls so much for watching. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next wild video. Peace.